Knut, welcome to the Bitcoin Source. Thank you for taking time out to have this conversation. Can we start things off by you introducing yourself to the audience?
Yeah, I'm Knut Svanholm. I wrote 3 books about Bitcoin. Bitcoin Sovereignty Through Mathematics, Bitcoin Independence Reimagined, and the latest one is called Bitcoin Everything Divided by 21 Million, which is a phrase from an article I wrote back in 2020. And that turned into a video, which featured an equation which then showed up everywhere. So that's why I named the book after that, I guess. And I'm currently on the beautiful island of Madeira, working with the Free Madeira project with a whole bunch of other Bitcoiners. And we're getting some help from the government here, or from the president here specifically, to make the transition into a hyper-Bitcoinized world smoother for this particular region of the world.
Nice. That's really good to hear. And, I'm so grateful to hear that, even during the bear market, there's still a lot of Bitcoiners putting in that proof of work and still creating things on the back end that, down the road, people will be happy to hear about.
What bear market?
the bear market that they give us the illusion that it's there, with the downtrend of the price. But yes,
If you never sold your Bitcoin, you never lost money. So, yeah. There's no bear market. If you can choose if there's a bear market or not.
So, Knut, so the first question I usually ask people on the Bitcoin Source is one that's probably my most important and the one that I love the most is pretty much, where did you source your Bitcoin knowledge, whether it's books, courses, or even people in the Bitcoin ecosystem that might have inspired you? So could you give the audience that answer to, where did you gain your aptitude for Bitcoin and what kind of inspired you to do so?
Like many people in my specific Bitcoin generation, I was orange pilled by Andreas Antonopoulos back in 14, 15 something. And then I attended an online course at the University of Nicosia, Cyprus in 2016 called Digital Currencies or something, in plural, where Andreas was one of the teachers, and I exited that with flying colors, and then I thought to myself, what am I going to do with all this newfound knowledge that I have? Am I going to invest in this education thing and do the full master's degree, or I could just stack some Bitcoin. I didn't have very much money to put aside, but I managed to get my hands on some Bitcoin and then started writing about it. And the more I thought about it, the more the plural word of the plural form of the word cryptocurrency made very little sense to me. I mean, even the first article I wrote is about how it's a comparison between the first Donald Duck comic book magazine and the best Donald Duck magazine, and which one will be worth more. And of course, the first is worth more regardless because it's scarcer and it was the first one. So that's the one people will want. That's the thesis from that old article. And I'm pretty proud that I stick to my guns and never took the bag of money from the shitcoiner X that tried to bribe me with a bag of money. I guess the phrase from Scarface comes to mind. All I have is my word and my balls, and I don't break them for no one. Happy to be here. It feels like I have a ticket to the front row seat here for the future of mankind and insider information about humanity, and it's just a damn good spot to be in. So I'm enjoying it.
Good. I'm enjoying it as well. And, it's just great and it's an honor to have you on because, your book has changed so many people's lives. It's definitely changed my life as a Bitcoiner, and reading about, your journey and how, 21 million, that number 21 million is such an important number. And, one thing in your book, Knut, that was really instrumental to me was time preference. And, man has time and Bitcoin has block height. So why is low time preference important to Bitcoiners looking to adopt this asset?
Well, it's sort of the other way around, that Bitcoiners, once you get your hands on some Bitcoin, you tend to adopt a lower time preference. For those that don't know, time preference is how like from a scale from high to low. So high time preference means you make very short-term decisions. And a person who has just been robbed of all his belongings, so you have nothing and you're a bum living on the street, then you tend to make very short-term decisions because you need to feed yourself and you need to find shelter. So that those become your priorities, and you think very little about long-term projects and your grandchildren and so on. But once you have capital and you know your financial situation is secured in some way, then you can afford to make more long-term decisions. And the comparison I draw in the book is that a high time preference is a very fearful state of mind, because you fear for your life all the time. And what is the opposite of fear? The opposite of fear is love. So having a lower time preference enables you to be a more loving and compassionate human being.
100%, I agree with that. And I think that, the most valuable thing we have, outside of, the higher power outside of God is time, because time is so important, it's so precious. And I think that, at least for me, once I really got into Bitcoin and I really started to understand the fundamentals and the protocol of what this asset is, I realized that time is just super important, and you have to really utilize it the best that you can,
Yeah, and only two things on this earth are absolutely scarce, and that's human time, your specific time on this earth, and Bitcoin. And that's what gives them value, I guess. Like, I make the argument in the book that an infinite, a being that was indestructible and could live forever would never be incentivized to do anything, because that being could postpone every action indefinitely. So the very thing that gives us motivation to do anything really is the fact that we will die one day. And Bitcoin provides a perfect representation of all human life and all human time in that sense.
Definitely. And Knut, I kind of want to switch gears because I want to talk about your book, because I think that it's very profound, and it's kind of crazy how things come full circle. So I actually watched your interview, or your speech, I should say, at Bitcoin Amsterdam, and you talked about the camaraderie that people have in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And ironically, when I read your book, and I actually started to pick it back up again recently, one of the first things in the book is that you kind of mentioned several Bitcoiners that you kind of dedicated the book to. And do you believe that Bitcoiners are the most helpful people in the cryptocurrency ecosystem?
Definitely. I don't believe there is a cryptocurrency ecosystem. I think there's Bitcoin and there's shitcoins. Shitcoiners are scammers, or either they're scammers or extremely gullible. And Bitcoin is the signal here, and all the rest is noise. And there's no way around that. Bitcoin prioritized, like a blockchain can solve 2 out of 3 problems, and that is security, decentralization, and scalability. And Bitcoin prioritized the first 2, security and decentralization. So any other cryptocurrency that wants to compete with Bitcoin will have to sacrifice one of those 2 in order to compete at all, which means that they will have to sacrifice either security or decentralization in order to become more scalable. And in doing that, they nullify the whole point of their existence, because if they're not secure and if they're not decentralized, then it's just another scam shit show. So we're back to the banking system again. So that's why Bitcoin had to lay the foundations first and then build scalability on second layers, such as the Lightning Network. The way I see it, you can't solve the double spending problem twice. It can't be double solved. Trying to replicate resistance to replicability makes no sense.
Yeah, most definitely. And kind of just to reference what you said too about the differentiation between Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, I think that a lot of people in the ecosystem are kind of confused on the two. And when you really look at like FTX, the shit show that we're seeing now with that, I always look at Bitcoin as a brand. And I think that cryptocurrency is a brand and Bitcoin's a brand, but the million other crypto things that are out there dilutes their brand. And with Bitcoin, it's only one. So there's no vacillation between is this or is this that. And I think that the cryptocurrency space, they're kind of seeing the errors of their ways now, with the market kind of changing, people going insolvent. And it's just beautiful to see, in a sense of like being a Bitcoiner and kind of sticking to your guns when people pressure you or tell you that, you know, you're a scammer or you're this or you're that because you believe in something outside of Bitcoin. I think that the true Bitcoiners understand what they're fighting for and why they're doing this. And just to look at Twitter and to see, you know, these big companies that have taken so many people's money kind of just falling by the wayside is just like incredible. It's like, wow, like, you know, Knut was right. Safety was right. Michael Saylor was right. You know, it's like beautiful to see it.
When you've been in this space for a while, you've seen this all before. It keeps on happening over and over again. It's the same thing. FTX is just another abbreviation. The first one was MT Gox, and the big takeaway is not your keys, not your coins, because that's the problem Bitcoin solves. Like, you can take custody of your own assets. Like it erases the differentiation between knowledge and ownership. So knowing your Bitcoin private key is the same as owning those Bitcoins. And that's why I always say, like, El Salvador has no Bitcoins. MicroStrategy has no Bitcoins. Some guy has those Bitcoins, or some guys if there's a multi-sig setup. But to say that a whole country owns Bitcoin, what is that, a multi-sig solution with, you know, 2.5 million out of 5 million people having to sign at the same time? I don't think so. They are custodial Bitcoin, and they don't really count. Bitcoin changes the dynamic so much in this sense. It reveals all emperors to be naked. There was never such a thing as a state. There was never such a thing as, like, any of these institutions. They were all in our minds all the time. Everything is in human society starts as an idea, and everything can be changed by a better idea. And Bitcoin is that better idea. It's rules without rulers. We no longer have to rely on politicians and bankers which show themselves their true colors on a daily basis. Almost nowadays, it seems. They show what they're capable of, and they show that they do not have your best interest as their first priority. Bitcoin doesn't give a shit. It's just rules without rulers.
Yeah, most definitely. And, you know, as they say, corrupt money corrupts absolutely. And, you know, what makes Bitcoin unique is its 21 million supply, right? And, you know, where do you foresee society changing when everything is divided by 21 million Bitcoin?
Yeah, it has always been corrupt. Like, gold was the best store of value we had in the past, because gold inflated gold's inflation had a linear relationship with the overall technology advancements across society. But Bitcoin is not gold. Bitcoin is absolutely scarce. So we're having a deflationary thing, which means that prices can go down indefinitely, which is very hard to wrap your head around and what that implies. Bitcoin is the total inverse of whatever is going on now. So it's very hard to wrap your head around what that implies. But first of all, I'd like to get back to the point about my talk in Amsterdam. The longer I've been in Bitcoin, the more I've experienced interacting with other Bitcoiners. And they're always very friendly, and they give up their time and their efforts for you for free all the time. And I thought a lot about that, and why is that? And why are these people giving me art and translations and editing my book and all sorts of stuff that they just give away for free, especially services? I came to the conclusion that their Bitcoin stacks are more precious to them than their reputational capital even. So like, us being friendly to one another is just Gresham's law playing out on Bitcoin Standard. So Gresham's law states that if a country has two currencies, let's say a US dollar and a Venezuelan bolivar, people will try to spend the crappy currency first. So they will try to get rid of their bolivars before they get rid of their dollars, and stack their dollars and get rid of their bolivars. Same with dollars and gold. People don't really interact with gold that much. They stockpile gold and they sell their dollars. And on a Bitcoin standard, that becomes even weirder because everything becomes worth less than your Bitcoin stack. So you tend to spend even your reputational capital before you spend your Bitcoin stack. And you know also that in doing so, in helping other Bitcoiners succeed, you help Bitcoin succeed. So you're incentivized in many different ways to help other Bitcoiners succeed. I mean, that's why we're doing this pod now. Like, you have me on as a guest because you believe I can provide something of value to your pod, and I'm on as your guest because I believe your pod can bring something of value to me. But we're not exchanging any sats. So I think the necessity for monetary transactions to happen at all goes down and not up in a hyper-Bitcoinized world. So we get to a place where the division of labor can happen without money. If you think of your family, you very rarely, and your closest friends, you very rarely, transact with each other using money. You just do favors, and you can rely on the other person giving you a favor back at some point, or like you want to help your fellow man. And what Bitcoin does is it enlarges this circle of your family. Like you can trust other Bitcoiners. Ironically, this don't trust, verify attitude makes it easier for us to weed out the bad seeds and separate signal from noise and interact with other Bitcoiners without using money. So I think we're headed towards a very bright future and a very, very different future where the yield is the friends you make along the way.
Definitely, and that social currency is so important, and that's something that I've kind of really learned. I got into Bitcoin in 2017, but I was still so, ignorant to it, and it took a long time until I really started writing about Bitcoin, creating articles for Bitcoin Magazine, connecting with people in the space such as yourself, reading these books that people put out. That's when I had the aha moment, the paradigm shift, and I realized you're right, Knut, like social currency is so important. I mean, I do send sats to people, but it's not in the sense of like, the way the fiat system is set up. If I feel inspired by someone, or someone has a project or a service out there that I like and they're offering it in only Bitcoin, I may purchase it. I may use a tipping feature on Twitter, for example. But for the most part, you are right. When I'm having these intellectual Bitcoin conversations with people, there's no sats exchanged, and there's no need because the value is in the conversation that we're having, like you said. And this will hopefully inspire and kind of push someone down the road that doesn't know about Bitcoin or is interested about Bitcoin to really get orange pilled.
Yeah, but I think it's not limited to only conversation, but everything. I mean, if you're a restaurant owner and you serve a Bitcoiner a steak and you don't charge the Bitcoiner for it, you're likely to get your worth, one steak worth of value back in one way or another at some point anyway. And also, like, if you have all ships rise with the tide, and as number goes up over time, all Bitcoiners become wealthier, and wealthier people tend to pick up the bill more often, for instance. So if 10 wealthy people go to a restaurant, and that by wealthy I mean Bitcoin wealthy and not fiat wealthy, because fiat wealthy people can be assholes. In Bitcoin, that's much harder. So one of those 10 people will pick up the bill, and if you go out to a restaurant 10 days in a row, 10 transactions happen because someone picks up the bill every day. If 10 poor people or greedy people, Bitcoin poor people, soul poor people, high time preference people go out to restaurants for 10 days in a row, they will split the bill every day, and then 100 transactions happen. So I have this theory that the wealthier you are in true capital, not fiat wealthy, but Bitcoin wealthy, the number of total transactions in society, the necessity for them goes away. And that's the weirdest part, because I don't really see an endpoint to that either. So what Bitcoin was, I mean, it's called a commodity and a money and a currency and a protocol and a network, but it's really just a mathematical experiment that we run in the back of our heads that enables us to interact with one another in all of these ways. And the weirdest part of that is that we had this ability within us to just be better to one another. We had it within us all the time. So all Bitcoin did was unlock something in us. So a Bitcoin private key, the cliche phrase I'm trying to popularize is that a Bitcoin private key is a literal key to your heart, so that you can wear it on your sleeve in public. Yeah, something like that. It sounds weird and it sounds a bit new agey, but I think that's where we're headed. We're headed to a much better world. And also the fact that Bitcoins are very hard to confiscate. Even if I put a gun to your head and say, give me all your Bitcoins, I can never be sure that you gave me all your Bitcoins. I can know that you gave me some Bitcoins, but as long as I don't know how many you have, which I can't, by the way, it makes no sense for me to threaten you or coerce you. It makes much more sense for me to provide something of value back in order to get something of value from you. And this is how the dynamics of violence change. There's a new Schelling point for how we interact with one another. And ultimately, that leads to, give peace a chance, the end of war, the end of poverty, the end of coercion, the end of everything bad. Bitcoin fixes everything.
And Bitcoin isn't the tip of the spear, it's the shield. And I think that people have to realize that Bitcoin is the shield to not only your finances, but the way that we socially interact with each other in our culture and our society, because everything has been corrupted, manipulated by money. Money is kind of the lifeblood of our society. And if that becomes corrupted, in theory, our society becomes corrupted. So I really agree with you, Knut, on that. That makes perfect sense. And last question for you, Knut. What is your favorite chapter in your book, 21 Million, and why?
At the moment, it's probably the Element Zero chapter, because we made a video out of that one. And I think that landed well. It's not my original idea. It came from a German Bitcoin philosopher called Jörg Hemsdorf. And I tried to popularize that idea because I thought very underrated. So I wrote a chapter about it, and Joni Appelberg and Guy Swan helped me make this beautiful little video animation of it. So if you haven't seen it, go and see that. That's the one I'm proud of at the moment.
Nice, most definitely. Knut, this Bitcoin conversation has been great. I really enjoyed it. I hope people get a lot of the gems that you kind of elucidated in this conversation, and they can use that to become better Bitcoiners. Can you give the world your social media handles or any future endeavors that you want the audience to know about?
Yeah, I'm at Knut Svanholm on Twitter. And my website is knutsvanholm.com, where you can find all my books and some Bitcoin merch. And I'm also making a wine at this point, Infinity Red, just because I can. And also check out the freemadeira.com website, where you can find out more about that project and what it's about. Yeah, that's my basic channels.
Great. Knut, once again, thank you for taking time to be on the Bitcoin Source. Have a good one.
Thank you.